So right now what we're doing while the rice finishes steaming is called Mizu Koji. It's the first step in brewing. So these tanks have all been sterilized, cleaned out, ready to go. Mizu Koji literally means water, Mizu, and Koji. We're adding just water and Koji, some minerals to change the water chemistry in each batch. The water chemistry is different in these two batches. And then for this one, in which we're going to use a 901 yeast, I added lactic acid. It is a modern sake. We just added lactic acid from the lab. But this one is a Yamahai sake, and we have a starter that we have to put in that we grew lactic acid with lactobacillus fermentation. So much more traditional way to make sake. We're going to make both these batches side by side. It should work out. They're both going to be about the same alcohol and the same kind of sweetness level. So we're able to brew both of these back to back and then press one right before the other. Koji finishes at a variety of moisture rates. So we record the moisture on the lid of the box. This particular one is 113% moisture. So the recipe calls for 10 kilos of Koji today, but I'm actually putting in 11.3 kilos of Koji because you have to take into account the moisture of the Koji when it's finished. We have some variability here in New England. That's 113, but the batch that we just grew last week finished at 106% moisture. So, you know, a pretty big difference. But you just have to take into account when you weigh it out to add it to the tank. I'm not going to bother to stir the Koji and water together. We have about 25 minutes left on the steamer. When the steamer's done and we cool the rice, we'll end up stirring the batch a lot. So it's not really worth it to clean and sterilize a tool to stir both of these and then re-stir it in about an hour. So we just don't stir it as long as the Koji gets wet. So we make sure that there's no Koji sticking above the level of water. We're super lucky today because we get to brew a delicious filtered sake for the taproom, but we're also brewing one of our most requested sakes of all time, Class M. I wore my Class M shirt today in homage to one of our most famous sakes. It is a Yamahai sake, which is a traditional brewing method. So we've added the Koji and the water to each tank. The minerals are in there to make the water chemistries unique in both of these batches. And then now we're going to add the yeast starter to get it in there before we add the rice. Usually we add yeast that we've prepared ahead of time and we add it after we've added the rice. But since the starter is so big, once the rice is done, I really want to get it cooled and in the tank. So we add the starter a little earlier just because of the time it takes to add it and clean up from adding it. Brewing Class M again. So that means instead of adding lactic acid and modern yeast that we've prepared, we are adding a traditional shubo. Shubo is a yeast starter that we grow ahead of time. Part of the life cycle of the shubo is using lactobacillus fermentation, which is the same thing they use to pickle cucumbers. First, we encourage that so that the lactobacillus will ferment and create our own lactic acid. And then you have a sweet, lactic-rich starter, and then you pitch your yeast into it. And brewing yeast loves acidic environments, and they love sugar. So the yeast takes off like a rocket. So now we have plenty of yeast cells in here for the whole batch of sake. We've got some delicious homemade lactic acid. The lactic acid that we use normally is from a lab, and it's delicious. It's just very clean and has no other flavor and aroma compounds. But when you ferment something to make something else, you get a lot of flavor and aroma compounds. Just like we ferment sugar to make sake, all those flavors and aromas are created in fermentation by fermenting sugar into alcohol. And by fermenting with lactobacillus, we certainly get lactic acid, but we also get a lot of chemicals that we all perceive as flavors and aromas. So the lactic acid tends to be funky, earthy. You get a big, big, big koji note from all the koji in there. And it really makes a delicious, earthy, heavier, full-bodied sake, which we love here at Farthest Star Sake. I tried to figure out some slick way to pump this into the tank or feed it in at the same time when we were doing brewing water, but at the end of the day, the best way is just to ladle it in there. Less mess, less stuff you have to sterilize. Instead of sterilizing a pump and hoses and everything, we just sterilize a ladle. It does smell awesome. This really smells amazing. Unfortunately, YouTube doesn't have smell-o-vision, but super like yogurty, lactic, fruity. You get a lot of like citrus notes from the lactobacillus. Big, big, big koji note. And you're just starting to get those big cherry notes from the 701 yeast that we used in the latter half of the shubos.